right, greetings and salutations. Hey, Krister, glad you can make it today. You're in the Europe land, so I don't know how late it is for you. Well, it's got to be 10 o'clock minimum, so late night, but glad to have you. Welcome everyone. As last minute, today was a bit of a slapdash. I mean, I feel like the last couple weeks have all been slapdash for me, but today was particularly slapdash. Oh, look at that. Nailed it. Well, I got the right continent. Not much there, but 10 p.m. Yes. Hey, Enki, good afternoon. Well, let's see. Where could I begin? Let's see. Well, yesterday was game night, and there were only three of us plus Daniel as GM, which is it's funny. I was joking with him yesterday that since I've joined his game, it's been nothing but calamities and missed sessions. I think since I joined, out of a possible maybe 5 or 6 games we've played, I want to say this was our third, which I guess is a 50%, which would be good for a batting average. Probably not what you're looking for necessarily in your game, but it's summer. So lots of people are going away, and we had those horrific floods which trapped Daniel in his castle. Couldn't get out. But we played last night, and it was we got some stuff. We got some stuff done. We made some progress. Playing the OD&D rules, which Daniel's playing now. It's his own version. I think that needs to be said, and probably everybody played a version. I don't know if there is, you could say one rules as written, because the rules are so, however you want to phrase it, incomplete, a framework, guidelines. It'd probably be madness to try to argue there's a particular, and then what I'm drinking here is watered down apple cider for the working man. There is a particular singular, this is the way. Of course, some things are more, ways of playing are probably better supported by the rules than others. It is what it is. So I have reading experience in OD&D, but other than playing Daniel's game at ShireCon last year and then playing in this game, this is my first time really just playing in a more or less OD&D game, though Daniel is kind of building his own rules, which I think everybody goes through this, especially with the more rules light versions of the game. You're building your own thing out of it. Now, last night, the highlight, we did some maneuvering around. We got lost. Well, we got lost twice, and he's very open with the rules. And what I mean by that is with the procedures, I guess I should say. So Daniel's style with this, nothing is really, information's not hidden. Or I should say procedures aren't hidden. So whereas in my game, I might want to check if you're lost. I'm going to roll behind the screen, get that you're lost, and then I'll narrate what's happening. Maybe you'll be able to tell you're lost. Maybe you won't. Might take you a while, that kind of thing. Daniel's game is easy to say, okay, roll for navigation, and then you roll out in the open, and then, okay, you're lost. And then such and such happens when you're lost, and then maybe you're trying to get back on track, that sort of thing. And, it's I think his style works very well. Obviously, all the information's in front of you. You know you're lost. You know you're not. In our case, I'm trying to remember. I don't think there was much of a. Ultimately, maybe just we got lucky, but we ended up kind of back at the beginning. We sort of went in a circle, so we didn't have to try to re-navigate from getting lost. Have to see in different situations if we were lost in a different space or different setting what happened. Then we ended up rolling, getting lost again, but just by the luck of the dice. Hey, Jason, by luck of the dice, we ended up getting where we needed to go, which was this we're in a bog, swamp, whatever. We're on a boat. We have a guide of sorts. Not a good guide. Obviously, we got lost a couple times, so certainly this guide was not protecting us from ourselves. And we got to this tree, and the tree was, I think, a sacred tree to some of these folks. Frederick, all the rolls are in the open, so there's nothing. You roll the die and you get that 1 and 2 or whatever chance, you're sunk. So It was not when we weren't desperate, and the game moves to the travel. It's moving quickly, so it was not a situation of like, oh, we need to kind of save us from ourselves, or we need to get to the where we were going. You could see him. I'm watching him. He doesn't really have a screen, and so I see the book he has out, and he's like doing a little calculations. He rolls a die. We were supposed to go, this way, and they were getting lost. But then it ended up like, oh, you went that way anyway. So I feel pretty confident that it is. And he said that in the moment, like, oh, you guys got lucky. You ended up getting where you needed to go to, even though we technically didn't really, can't say we really navigated there. So we get to this tree. And the tree, so there was a, gosh, I don't want to get too far into the weeds. Not 3 or 4. Oh, I think with the swamp, I think, is it 1 and 3? I forget what it is. There's a pretty good chance of getting lost, and I think he's playing that part. I don't think he has any custom rules, so I'm pretty sure he's going by the book in terms of that part. The what was I going to say? Oh, so there's we had hooked up with these, I guess, swamp dwellers. Maybe the best thing to do. Joseph says doing the whole getting lost thing is such an odd duck to me. Done both of those ways and still does not work perfectly. I mean, I like it. So I like the getting lost stuff. Maybe I'm biased in that way. But what I like about it is that it can get you in. It's one of those things where it's just another way of altering the shape of things in ways that nobody could have realized. You're going in the woods. You think you're going to go east and do this. Now suddenly you're moving north and you end up, and then you see something new, something you weren't expecting, as me as a GM wasn't expecting. And sometimes you're getting lost and you never end up getting back to the thing you were going for anyway, because the stuff that you end up getting lost in is more important. Krister says that hooked up with swamp dwellers reminds me of their ex, or reminds them of their ex. Not that kind of hooking up. As soon as they came out of my mouth, I said, maybe I should have picked up a different word. We made diplomatic contact with these swamp dwellers. And they told us that they had a new leader, and their old leader was this swamp witch, or a witch who lived with them in the swamps. And the witch was now trapped, cursed to this tree. And this is what we were trying to find. We are to try to find this tree and help them also get these kind of clams and see what's going on with this witch. And in return, they were going to help us kind of get to where we're going. So we get to the tree, and we find that the witch has sort of been merged with the tree, or at least she's kind of half in the tree. I don't know. We didn't get the full story. Maybe I should have asked better questions in terms of the detail, whether she was just stuck in the tree, or whether the tree and her were sort of had become one in some kind of unholy way. And there are a bunch of these smallish demons who are kind of got the tree surrounded and are poking the tree, not the witch, poking the tree with this special sticks with hot embers, or something seeming like a hot ember, or embers on the end, agitating or killing the tree. And this is where the kind of interesting part from, say, an OD&D mechanics thing came up, is that these he was playing them. So we have different, in OD&D you have essentially 3 different styles of combat. There's or maybe so I'm sorry, in chainmail. So I guess in OD&D you really have 4, because you have the alternate combat system, which is in the book, which essentially is D&D combat, pretty much with some changes, but essentially D&D combat from then all the way up to 5th edition is pretty much that same thing, right? D20 versus armor class, whatever hit points. That's the alternate combat system. That's way number 1. Or you can use chainmail, which is what it says in OD&D. In chainmail, there's 3 different types of combat. And Daniel, he's a big fan of all these different methods. I go back and forth. I love the flavor of it. I love it just in terms of an artifact. I don't know if I always love it in terms of practicality, especially when teaching new players, because you have these 3 systems and it's not always super clear or sensical why one thing works in another thing, and these differences. So things change. So you go from the troop combat, which is basically an X and 6 roll with basically 1 hit kill, except things with more hit dice need more hits. But essentially you equal the hit dice in hits, and around they're dead. is what it goes down. So if you're a hero who's equivalent to 4 men, something has to hit you 4 times in one round to kill you. Otherwise, you can just keep going. So it makes your heroes seem really heroic, because you can send a guy who's a hero a bunch amongst of just ordinary armor on and stuff, and some couple of rolls, and it would look like just this guy went and slaughtered them all. That's kind of that, like, haha, I am Conan amongst the peasants kind of thing. That's using kind of the troop combat. Then you have man-to-man, which is where you are rolling weapon versus armor. And in that case, which we did for these, and then there's, well, let me get through it, and then I'm already sidetracking myself. So there's man versus man, which is weapon versus armor, which is a 2d6 roll. And I think it might also, depending on how you're playing it, be one hit, one kill. One hit's a kill, but you got a lot more diversity. It's your armor versus your weaponry. And then there's the fantasy combat table, which is also one hit, one kill, but it's essentially, you have to be really powerful. This is where you get if something on the fantasy combat table, it's something that can be impossible to kill for a normal man. Oh, all right. Did I have an audio crash? Oh, well, if I missed anything, let me know. Well, you probably wouldn't know because I was on an audio crash. In any case, so on the fantasy combat table, and I don't have books in front. Wait a minute. Actually, that's not true at all. Hold on. I actually have my OD&D box set right here. And this box set has, well, it's got a few things in it, but it has my copy of Chainmail. I was gone for 5 to 10 seconds, but it's better now. All right. Well, sorry for the gap. On the fantasy combat table, which I'm going to try to flip through and show. Here we go. Hold on a second. Let's just do this. So there's the fantasy combat table. Beep, beep. You have something like a dragon, let's say, or a Balrog or something else, and the dragon is essentially unkillable by normal people. Cannot be killed. You're not just, if you're below a hero, essentially, or a hero equivalent, and it gets complicated. It seems simple. Oh, like, I'm not a hero, I can't do it. Well, if your book says hero -1 on your chart, then you can attack as a hero with a penalty if you're on the fantasy combat table, and anything can attack you with a bonus. So if you were hero -1, then something on a fantasy table could attack you, and they would get a +1 penalty, and you were attacking it. So there's at least, now this is how Daniel plays it. This may not be vanilla. I don't know. I really need to go through and reread it, especially now that I'm playing, to get a better sense of it. But these demons, they were not true demons, which I think he was using Balrogs as kind of, if you were like a big time demon. These were like demons -4 or something he was using. So he was sort of doing it on the table. And then we had to check on the fantasy table. Now I'm playing a character who is a fighter who's level 4, so he's a hero. So he's on the table and can go. And another player who's a higher level, an elf, also was on the table. But then there was the third PC was actually not on the table. Actually, we found out later that Daniel aired, and he should have been able to attack on during fantasy combat, but he was out. So it was pretty interesting, because you can get in these situations where we had henchmen, but the henchmen were basically worthless. The henchmen could not touch these demons. The other interesting thing is this protection from evil spell, and I think we were all a little bit unsure, including Daniel, how this was going to work. So one of the guys was able to cast protection against evil 10-foot radius. So while if you were in the 10-foot radius when he cast a spell, you would be protected as long as you stayed in that 10-foot radius. If you left the 10-foot radius, you would drop out of the spell, but then you couldn't come back. It's not like it's like kind of a one-time sort of connection, and once you break that connection, it's broken kind of thing. But the issue is the demons had a chance to break the spell, but it was kind of we got a little bit hung up on what does it mean to break the spell? So if they're coming in essentially resisting the spell, does it mean that they just resist the spell entirely? Does it mean they resisted against one of the individuals of the spell? Like, how did that work? And we ended up having it, I think they just resisted it entirely, but it's probably something we might want to revisit. It's an interesting kind of gray area. But in that combat, with the spell, if you had the spell on, the demons basically couldn't touch you. You could just, and it wasn't a repelling. They couldn't hit you. And then I thought they did a good job of I'm sort of skipping ahead a little bit, but at one point, well, first they cast the one guy cast the protection from evil 10-foot radius. We were all in 10-foot radius. We're all protected. But then they broke the spell. Now the two magic users, because the other guy who, so we had one elf who obviously can cast magic. I'm a fighter. The other guy was also a magic user. They then wanted to cast protection of evil on themselves, which they both had, but they needed time to do it. So I kindly put myself in great personal risk and had my fighter essentially occupy the demons while they ran back to cast the spell. And the way Daniel was doing the fantasy combat table was, since I had 4 hit dice, I had 4 HP basically, and each hit, if the demons got one on me, would take down one hit point basically, or one of my hit dice. So if I got down to 0 hit dice, I would be dead. So I had to hold them off for a round, and I took 2 hits, but I was able to fend them off. Now, unlike in the troop combat table, because I survived the round, I didn't get those hit dice back in terms of hit points. They were down until the end of combat. So I got basically taken down to half health, but then they got their protection from evils up. They then came up and sort of blocked off the demons. I was able to retreat. And because we were on the fantasy table, I was able to fire into melee, because according to Daniel, the way he runs it anyway, the fantasy table kind of breaks the other rules. So even though you're not allowed to missile fire into melee when you're running troop combat, and presumably man-to-man also, the fantasy table kind of wipes all that out. So I was able to contribute after being the defensive bulwark of the group. And then after that, we did a bit more mucking about. We had to kill the witch, and I did the honors of killing the witch because she was, I think she was going bad, or something was happening to curse. In any case, she was asking to be killed, and so I killed her. And we got some clams that we needed, and we got some other things, and then we basically navigated over to kind of our final destination, and then we ended the game there. I think so. I think someone like Daniel, and I don't want to speak for him, I think he likes, and I'm sure he's not the only one who likes all these different variables that come into play with different systems. The problem with that, and it was funny because I got there a little bit early before everybody else. We were talking about things, and he mentioned that, if the elf has a magic sword, they could be a hero. And I think the other guy who's also a magic user, I think he might also be an elf, and he had a magic sword, but Daniel forgot that bumped him up to hero status, so that he should have been able to attack on the fantasy table instead of not being able to. And it was just a goof. Like, he just forgot about it. And afterwards, we were just talking about some stuff as he's packing up. And I'm like, he's like, this was wrong. And this to me is one of the issues that you can run into when you have all these different systems, because if everyone hasn't mastered the systems, then these things can fall through the cracks. Now, in our case, nothing bad happened. Nobody was hurt. Nobody died. It was not vital. It made no difference ultimately. He ended up casting that other character ended up casting Phantasmal Force and doing some damage. So it was all good. He had there were other methods for him to contribute, and he did. But it's just one of those things that having these different systems means that you have to kind of be on top of them, or you just have to be open to the potential that you're going to miss something. And that could have been a big deal if a third of the party was basically scrambling for other things to do because they couldn't attack these guys, and then it had gone bad or something else that happened. Then you realize afterwards, like, he could have, right? You just have to have that mastery of the systems. Whereas if we were always playing in the fantasy combat, or we were always playing in, say, the regular D&D combat, all of us would have better knowledge over what we can do or not do, if that makes sense. But it was a fun time. It was a fun time. Nobody died. I got to contribute in my own small way. We killed the witch, a good witch, apparently. And it was funny because then these he's running, this swamp is from a book, and I don't know if this was his encounter or a book's encounter, but these kind of small, seemingly cannibal kind of creatures around little humanoids came up and they threatened us that we were in their hunting ground, so we'd either have to give them cheese or they would eat us. And one of the guys happened to have salami in his inventory, so we traded salami for our lives. I don't know whether that was, if we didn't have the salami, whether that would have how badly off we would have been, but that was kind of fun. That was a little bit of a funny moment. Just putting in some notes here. Now I've been doing some work. Oh, well, actually, before I get into that, I got more things. I have more to say. Curse you and your daily doubles, Trebek. I went and I got to meet. So I'm in. If you haven't heard, I'm doing this project with the Dungeon Key, doing a conversion of their Morkborg module, Kavalov Sanctuary, to Old School Essentials, and just by sheer circumstance, he had planned ages ago a trip to New York City. So he sent me a message the other day and said that he totally forgotten, but I'm in New York, and he's like, oh, I'm actually gonna be in New York over the weekend. Would I be able to meet up? And we did this morning. So I went over to, I met him over in a coffee shop in Manhattan. Can you read that? I like this font, but I feel like it's going to fail my test of can I read it? I feel like maybe the answer is no. I kind of want a handwritten font for some things, but that might not be the one. So that was cool. So so that's part of why my day was a little bit all over the place, because I was in Manhattan kind of doing that, and we met at I don't know if it's not a bad time necessarily, but does that work? I kind of want I want a handwritten sort of vibe for some of this, but I don't know. Is that your uppercase A? I'll try it for right now, but maybe raise it up. I think do they have a bold? They only have a regular. All right, I gotta see a man about a font. So I went out and saw him. We just kind of chatted about stuff, and then I walked him. He's here with his partner, and he was on the west side, and she was on the east side, and so, but it had rained. It was pretty rainy this morning, but then by the time I met up with him at the coffee shop, it had kind of cleared up into a really lovely day. So I walked across the park. He when I dropped him off, we took a couple of pictures, but it wasn't on mine. It's on his camera, his phone. So when I get those pictures, maybe you'll see them on social media. He may post them somewhere. Sounds really nice. Really nice, obviously, to see people in the flesh. It's one of those things that's kind of funny. You just don't. It's almost like you don't really even think about, oh yeah, there's an actual. We're not just shadows or things projected onto screens. No, it's not. I might need to go and find a handwritten, because I want to kind of have some notes. Ink free. That one's not bad. I don't like the serifs on that. No, I don't like that one. Ink free might be okay, but they've only got the one. I'd like to have something. Let me see. I got a crap ton of fonts. No, I'm not gonna do cursive. Old English, no. Rage italic, no. No. Tempest sans, no. No. I don't want to do them as images. I could just on my iPad write something and have it do that, but I think I'm gonna go with that ink free. I think maybe I'll go with ink free for now, and then we'll We will go from there. Okay. Frederick says, you see and done that demons just cannot cast harmful magic use weapons. They elected to cast charm person on the party. Oh, yeah. Well, the demons, these guys were trying to hit us with their sharpened sticks. Sharpened sticks, but we got better. It was a good game. It was a good game. And then, yeah, that was good. So now I'm back. I took a bunch of notes. One thing I realized I hadn't really gotten into, and I'm just coming up with this kind of as we go. So remember I talked about I've been struggling with a term for basically what these little kind of city states, but I don't want to call them city states. I don't want to call them, I don't know, feudal. I mean, in a way, they'd be kind of feudal estates, or they'd be, dukedoms, whatever. Someone mentioned sovereignties, which I liked a lot in far as a term, but I had forgotten. This is why I always want to write things down. I had forgotten and then remember that I had forgotten that keeping in the lion. So I've been kind of going big, leaning into the lion symbolism. They call their leaders the lions and now the lionesses. Their name, like here I have oops, I misspelled it. The Leoningian, what they call themselves, and they call themselves the Leoningus. They're all these Leo, right? I'm doing a lot with lion here. And so it occurred to me that what I was, it had occurred to me earlier and I'd forgotten about it and then remembered that I'd forgotten and hence remembered that the term I wanted to come up with in these individual ones is dens, that they would say that's a den of this. Well, lion's den, right? So there's each one of these is a den. I haven't updated here. You can say it still says sovereign. I still like it, and I will use that term in the text kind of to describe what that is. But in terms of the names, end up having dens as the kind of official term. The other thing I had realized I hadn't really done and hadn't really thought about so much in my brain is what the religious system is. So I actually took one of this. I had a name here and I wasn't really happy with it as a place name, but then I've kind of repurposed it as the name of their deity that I'm saying the guy who originally became the sort of founder of this people, that part of his, or at least that kind of creation story or foundational story, is they were followers of a sky god called Angrim, represented by I think a hawk or maybe a rock or ROC, not ROCK, or let's say a giant hawk as the kind of emblem. And that's sort of still the state religion, is that, even though, but I want to, part of the other thing is there's a big undercurrent of ancestral worship, the way they sort of, to pun intended, lionize the lions, and that they're in this kind of near mythical demigod sort of state, the lions, that you also have that undercurrent. So yes, officially we have this Sky Father religion, but then right underneath it, kind of this undercurrent, you wouldn't necessarily know it from if you were at a state function at one of these dens in the court, you wouldn't necessarily know it, but in folks' homes, definitely amongst the common folk out in the country, and even behind the scenes, there's this layer of these kind of semi-mythical, in a sense, forebears. Hey, the K5K, and long time no see, says the themes are great for tying everything together like this, inspirational during the creative process. Absolutely. I think theming is super good. It can really help crystallize things and give you direction when you might be directionless, as I certainly was. So I was going to, let me get back here. So let me move. No, where's that? Move. Yep. Move you up. I might need to add a page in here. This might get ugly at first. I need to add. Is this the adding page? Some of the things I still don't remember exactly where they are. Yes, after 1 page, 2 pages. Oh, let's do 2 pages. Oh, I'm glad you made it. Glad you made it. So what I took notes on, and I didn't mention this so much yesterday, but one of the other things going into town does, and this is would go both for yesterday as I was commuting to go in and play the game, and today as you get the subway time. And since I'm traveling mostly off hours, even this morning I wasn't really at rush hour. You can get a place to sit. It's not onerous. It's not super crowded. Put on some music, or I'll put on a podcast, whatever, and then I can kind of fiddle away with notes on my phone. So I was kind of riffing on this, and unfortunately for me, I'm really enjoying using Logseq, LOGSEQ, as this sort of notational It is a notational kind of tool. If you can see there, it has a lot. It's markdown based, but it's more, I want to say, molecular than something like Obsidian, which I also enjoy. Each one of those, if you notice, it's all sort of bulleted. They use bullets, but each of those bullets, you can nest everything, and it's atomic in that it's not a whole page. All these blocks are kind of independent, depending on how you you build these hierarchies out of them, but all the blocks are their own thing, which I really like. Really good, but it doesn't have, I don't have it all synced up together. So even though I'm on my computer where I have Logseq also on my computer, I don't have it. They're not interoperable, and I don't know the best way to move things around. So if you see me, I'm looking down at my phone. This is because I literally need to look down because that's where my notes are. I don't even have my phone and my iPad are not synced up in Logseq. That's kind of the last thing I need to sort of figure out, because it would be great, even better than it already is, to be able to get stuff out. But having to remember on which device I had put my notes is not a tenable situation for the long term. But I'll deal with it right now. But the subways, public transportation, unlike driving in your car, which I did a lot of when I lived in Texas, driving in a car, you might have a great idea. Maybe you've got some kind of hands-free thing where you can make a voice note, but you essentially have to sit and stew on it until you can get somewhere where you can write it down. And plus, there's all the aggravations. If I'm driving in New York City traffic, you're not getting a lot of peace. It's a lot of annoyance. Whereas with the subway, especially if I'm not in a hurry, it's not necessarily a short ride. I think it's from where I am to where I went this morning, and maybe a 35-minute ride, something like that. I didn't time it. But, you just can kind of get in a groove. You get a seat. It's air conditioned. You put your headphones on, and I was reading some more Clark Ashton Smith, and and I'm just, oh yeah, I remember this, and it's kind of nice. It's not that I necessarily want to get on the subway every morning, because I don't, but it's not onerous. It's not terrible, and I find I got some stuff done. So I was working on the idea of the 7 dens, right? So we have this, each one of these sovereignties is a den. And except for the Leoden, which again, right, I just mentioned lion theme. Leoden, which you see is down here. That's the old capital. This was the city that was the capital of the Lions when the Lions were around. Hey, Brian. Yep, late Friday stream indeed. The Leoden was the capital, and that one has a special name, which is called the Lion Seat, because it was where the seat of the lion was. So you have essentially 6 dens, and then the lion's seat, Leoden. And then you have the lionesses. There's one for each of these. And then the one that sits in Leoden, because she happens to control the old capital, which is, remember, there's this ancestor worship going on. So it's a big deal. It's being the heiress, being the lioness of Leoden is not a joke. It's something that it has, even though she is, in a practical level, she is no more powerful than the other ones. She has a little bit of an extra oomph to her because just of her positioning, the luck of the genetic draw. She was the daughter, whatever. That's just where she sits in the hierarchy, and she is known as the Grand Lioness. And if it came down to some, there's 7, so you wouldn't really get a tie. But if it came down to something, people might look to her to make a decisive situation. They might look to her leadership, the people, not necessarily the other, the other lionesses. I don't think would see it that way, but the folk, the people would, I think, would look to her a little bit. Rakshasa's vizier providing less than ideal advice to the Grand Lioness. Yay, you never know. You never know. So I kind of sorted that out. And then I added, since I've been looking for details, because we went over a little bit yesterday, because we got a little bit yesterday, but I was looking for these kind of details. I should probably, while I'm here, just the den of, and then this is the, and I'll just put the, what did I call it? The lion's seat, right? It's not an of. Do we have a parens? I might have to do something with that. I'll just call it the lion's seat, because that parens, sometimes you get these fonts with these beautiful lettering. In this case, what is it called? An uncial or unkiel lettering. Uncial, I think it is. But the parentheses, I don't think were used in that time. So there's not a beautiful uncial parentheses. So you put one in, it just looks bleh. So I might need to make a thing there. Oh, so so what was I say? Oh, so we did so the Grand Lioness controls the lion's seat. And then I was also thinking about, because one of the other things we were talking about is what kind of we were looking at, okay, so for each of these dens, what are the things that we sort of, what do we want to know? We decided we want to know, I want to know who's in charge. Population, though they're all going to be in the relatively same area. The lion's seat will have more than the others because it's the older capital. The services, or goods and services, kind of what sort of commodities are going around. It's going to be very basic. This is basically going to be, it's similar to, I mean, obviously without the scope of, but the lion's scat. I could see that because the E. I might change it to this font. I haven't really decided, because I put this in sort of on the last minute, and I might change it back to that. But yeah, I can see that where you can get scat. What was I going to say? The goods and services. Oh, I was saying, so basically there's not going to be any mechanics in this bit. This is all setting information. Most mechanics I might have are some tables that you can roll on. No particulars. This system free. But I was coming up with some, and I'm not going to have maps for all these cities, so it's basically going to be a list. I've said yesterday, I just don't necessarily find the maps super useful. I've never seen any games or run any games in which I've been tasked with anything that would require a map of the city. But I do like when there can be sort of a monument or some kind of like what do you know? Like what would someone says, "Oh, I'm coming to visit your city. What should I go see?" Like what is a landmark in the town? Like what is the town known for? That kind of stuff I like. I do like that. And I was thinking again about, I'll have to mess around with that later. Hey, and I was thinking again about these situations, and I still need a name for this. The Grand Lioness, the Queen of Leoden. But I kind of like this idea of that there was a. I was thinking kind of Roman style, so I think that the main avenue in Leoden is something called the Leonine Way. And on the Leonine Way, there's something that's called the Procession of Lions, which has all these grand statues of these now kind of ancient and semi-legendary kings, these lions. Yep, everyone's seeing. Ian also saw lions scat. Well, maybe this is all making my font choice for me, or I can find an alt. There might be an alternate E also. I have to look at because they have some alternates. In any case, this procession of leading up to the castle, which is also the grandest castle of all the castles in terms of at least its sort of pomposity. The one in Leoden is the best, or the best is the fanciest, I guess, because it was the capital. So you come up this Leonine Way, and there are all these statues of the lions, and I had this idea. I'm just going to leave it there as a bit of a, I don't want to say a plot, a hook, but something for you is that the current lioness has commissioned and is putting up a statue of herself that she's going to append to the procession of lions. And this is has caused some consternation and murmuring and whatever, because obviously for multiple reasons, right? We have this ancestral worship thing. So in a sense, you're putting in a couple of different ways. She's really sort of putting herself literally up on a pedestal. She's literally making a statue of herself. She's literally putting it with these other kings, but these other kings ruled over the whole valley, where she only controls the capital and essentially the couple hex or two hexes around it. So not only is she putting herself with folks whose stature surpassed hers, but that it's also making kind of a quasi-religious statement, right? Because these are all almost kind of demigods at this point. She's kind of putting herself amongst them. So I'm going to throw that out there as just a little something that you can build off of, or not. It could just be a nice just a detail that's in the background, or it could be interesting. But I'm hoping that I'll have some of those that people will be able to pick out and find and say, oh, I want to play concerning that. Like, what's going on with that? What are the other lionesses, or what other plots are going on? Obviously, if you're doing this, does this mean that she has certain goals in mind? Does she see herself as someone who wants to try to take over? Now, there's been sort of a constant Cold War going on forever amongst the different houses, because someone does want, it's not like no one wants to be the first lioness that's been, the true lioness, someone who's united all the whole valley again. Like, they all want it. It's just that by virtue of things, no one's been able to get enough going for enough time. I don't know how much I'll get in the history. I don't have a lot of the history written. I do have this idea that there have been times when some of these have fallen under the sway of other ones but that they don't ever last, and that they end up falling back into their pattern. So I don't have that all figured out, but I kind of like this idea of how are these different lionesses maybe showing their motivations, because in really any kind of game of this type, the players aren't going to be directly exposed to their machinations, at least not off the bat. I mean, of course, depending on the type of game you're playing. If you're playing where you want to play a game where the players are starting off as junior nobility or something where they might be in the know on some of this, then hey, that's fine. But for the most part, you're starting that kind of zero to hero outside the power structure, and they're going to disrupt it and in their own ways and do whatever. Then they're not going to be privy to what's going on. But there, you can in showing these outward moves. Okay, she's building the statue. You're giving a hint to her motivations of what's going on. Then maybe you can have other things happening that are in, what does this do? Like, and it's a question I'll ask myself, and maybe other GMs, if they ever play this, would ask also as well, how are the other lionesses? How do they perceive it? What are they doing? Are they suddenly putting up statues, commissioning statues of themselves? Are they, is somebody plotting to bring that statue down, that they're going to, before it can be, you can put a clock on it, right? The statue is going to be unveiled and all this is going to be finished and mounted, and there's going to be some kind of big ceremonial festival around this statue. that'd be a great time for something nasty to happen to that statue. Would somebody even decide to try to kill the Grand Leoness for kind of not necessarily bucking the system, but maybe pushing a little too far in that kind of Caesar way where he's starting to push himself as like a living god? So someone's like, oh, this not having this kind of thing. Because I imagined in my brain that for the most part, these, maybe for all the part, these statues were all things that were done in not when the people are alive, right? This is something that is done afterwards, or maybe it's planned for something. Yeah, I was thinking of it kind of in a pharaonic sort of sense, like, oh, okay, maybe this is happening. Maybe this is, oh, that's where it is. No, where is this stuff? The Eastfold Hex. I'm staring at it in my head and I'm not seeing it. Are these people, how are they responding to it? What's going on? What are these folks doing? So, and trying to make it gameable, I guess, would be the other thing. Make it gameable way when you're not. So that could be a whole first adventure. Someone's heard the plot's going around that someone's going to take down. They're not going to let, you can hear it in the tavern. Well, they're not going to let that statue go up. Maybe that's a way that the party can get involved in something. Could be that their first adventure could be stopping the statue from coming down, or maybe someone could hire them to bring the statue down because we can't have this nonsense going on over here. So that's the concept. Who knows how it'll end up ultimately turning out, but so I need to write some of the stuff in here. I don't think I have as many minor headers. What I need is, what was I doing? I think 2. I don't know if I like definitely can't say I don't like the Gothic font. Should I go with that for these and just go with the Gothic? Let's see what it looks like. Maybe. I don't know, but then I don't see it's too much of a. I'm gonna have to mess. I'll go around back and forth on the fonts. So maybe I'll leave it alone for right now, because otherwise I'll be thinking about it. I think I might have to change the background if I'm going to go with this font, because I like the graph paper as sort of being scrappy, but I don't like it if it's what is this? Because I don't think that's supposed to be that heading. An empty font. Oh, that's the typewriter. Right, because I had that typewriter font that I like a lot. That's another one that I got. I'm gonna have to find that one again. Find it again. What's that? Oh no. All right, I'm just gonna keep it plain for right now, and I will come back to the fonts because that is no fun for anybody. So let's see, the Leonine Way. I'll have to put up, and then we've got the Procession of the Lions. All right, I'm just gonna put as the Leonine Way approaches that's the name of the castle. I should probably put that there too. Castle. It is lined by columns, lined by, I guess, statues of the I don't need to really erase all that. Grand statues of the old lions. I still need I don't have a name for this person, so I'll just call it the Grand Lioness has commissioned a statue of herself to be placed within the ranks of the procession. This has caused some amount of yeah, a lot of so the K5K says no point in everything looking amazing if you have no content, which is true. It loves everything I just spoke of was covered by blah 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 on the doc. Yes, very true. It's one of the things, you know, I go back and forth. Sometimes I think this is true of a lot of smaller creators. I sometimes like to go straight into the layout because it just, I don't know. I like being able to see what it's going to look like, but then at the same time, you can get wrapped up in spending too much time on things that aren't super important. Like, not that they're not. I want to say they're not. They're not. They are important. They are very important. Things like the presentation is very important, but the presentation is a little bit of a step down from the content. You need to have the content first, as the K5 cases, before you need to worry about presenting it. There's no point in no content. There's no presentation. It's kind of like I do get I don't want to say the best of both worlds, but the one thing about, say, as I'm making notes on the subway on my phone, is in that space, I'm isolated from all the layout stuff. So I can kind of just fiddle with that, and I'm not too worried about what it looks like, as opposed to here when I'll start to write stuff and then I'll look at it and then I'll want to monkey around with how it looks. It may not actually be the best workflow for me, but it's kind of what I've got right now. Quentin Castle is the ancestral castle of the lions. Capital. Ancestral castle of the lions? Yeah, I guess that works, right? I'll probably add more detail to it, but Lion Way is the Theoden's major avenue that runs from the gates to, do I like Castle? Yeah, it is Castle. I'll call it Castle. My layout, K5 cases, my layout, design, presentation skills dwarf theirs. I don't know about that. I'm really a goof. I am a design layout goof. Yeah, I had a little bit of experience in it ages ago. You know, in some alternate universe, I was able to continue a path of working on that because I did really enjoy it, as much of a pain in the butt it was. But I went other directions. So this is kind of nice. It gets me to bring it back. But I am in no way, I feel like, in a position to be looked up upon by anyone else. I will say that if you're looking for resources, I found a lot of good stuff on Design Cuts, designcuts.com. They have lots of, you can buy from individual things, good bits. They also have all these, constantly have deals on a whole bunch of stuff packaged together. You can find lots of good things on there. So like a lot of these fonts come from there, and their fonts are good. They're decent, because sometimes one thing I think as a sort of small creator, you're trying to cobble together, you know, what can I get for free, or what can I get for super cheap? And there's nothing wrong with it. I do the same thing, but it's worth spending it. It can turn into more money. It doesn't have to be, but it's worth spending a little time and attention on your fonts, because a lot of times you go for those cheap fonts, there is a little bit of, you get what you pay for. That with some of the cheap fonts, they just haven't taken the time to get all the kerning and everything, and things that I used to remember better what they all meant, but leading and kerning, all these things are all these different parts of the font that come together to make it look nice when you're printing it, or when you're doing different things, that they look good at different sizes, that they just look good in different ways. And sometimes these little things, they seem little at the time, you may not notice them, they'll come out and kind of bite you, or then all of a sudden you'll see it. Like there's weird spacing, or oh, it looks okay at this size, but if I bump it up a little bit, it starts to look funky, or it doesn't have all the glyphs that I need, because I need like a euro symbol, and they didn't do it because they, this was a free little project, so they just made the most common characters or symbols, and they didn't add a glyph for this thing. Like there's just a lot of things, whereas you get the more pro fonts, and they got you covered. And I've had good success with the design cuts fonts. I have bought some fonts that were more expensive from more, I guess, like larger foundries. And I would say when you get those, sometimes this isn't apparent, sometimes it is, but I feel like it's worth investing at least a little bit, if it's just time and effort in really finding and looking at and examining the fonts, or paying. I think it's worth it, because a sucky font is kind of sucky, and that's what you're going to see the most of in a book, is these fonts. What are you choosing for what font you choose for your body copy, what font you choose for your headers? It makes a big difference. And if someone feels you're saying like, oh, this font, as much as I personally like this Unseal thing kind of font, but if it's making the lion seat in the lion scat and people aren't doing it, then to me, I got to change it. If I can't find an alternate E, some of them also have alternate letters for different things. If I can't find an alternate E that does it, then I'm like, oh, it's maybe not worth it. It's the thing that I always kind of ding that first Morkborg book on, is like, as much as I think it's really cool, that that original Gothic font they had was just so extreme that I just had a hard time reading it. And the last thing you want as you're trying to read a book, especially one that's different or has rules and things, is a font that you can't read. I got a couple minutes left. I want to get this bit in here from my phone. Let's see. So I got Quillian Castle. I've got the Leonine Way. I've got that the Grand Leoness has commissioned a statue of herself to place in the ranks. This caused some controversy amongst the other Leonesses. Among the other Leonesses, and even the common folk. I'll do that for now. I'll have to come back and kind of polish it up a bit, but that works. Let's see. The other thing, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm really impressed with, what's it called? Hold on. It's called Perplexity, which is in one of these chat apps, but it's not, or at least I don't use it for creation so much as I do it to make Google searches. So I was doing things like Google searching for give me Merovingian names. I don't know why Merovingian. So the Merovingians were sort of early Frankish culture. I think Charlemagne would be the probably famous Merovingian king, but it just spat out. It gave me a bunch. I'm going to use some of these as is, and I don't know if I can say I don't know if I can use them as is, but the other thing I was able to do is then I was able to ask it for a bunch of these names, and it gave me 50. I think it did repeat at the end, so I had to cut out a couple, but it gave me also, I asked it for meanings, and it gave me a bunch of meanings. So you get great things like Doda means beloved, Urchena is sacred, and austere is firm. And I like those because you can split them up. You can kind of cut them up. So, Gondulf, not Gandalf, but Gondulf is Battle Wolf, but apparently was a lady's name. And it also gives you all the sourcing, so you can go and find more. So that, for example, it gives me the link to Wikipedia, which then has a list of Frankish queens, so we can take a look at some of these. Marguerite of Provence. Wow, they even have broken. Wow, they really got it broken down. So there's Basina of Thuringia, Clotilde of Burgundy, Gunthiuk Radegund, Ingund, Waldrada. Good stuff. So I don't know if it's available. I don't know what Perplexity is, if it's just an app, but I kind of recommend it if you like to ask a lot of questions. And it's great because I can ask a question. So what I like about it is these are things I could go and find out on. I could go into the search engines and type it up, right? Do that myself. But it might take me 3 or 4 questions just to get to the thing I want to know. Maybe, depending, or I'd have to look for it. It doesn't, I might get articles, whatever. But this, I think it does a good job of doing the connective tissue, looking up names, looking at meanings. I don't know. Whatever it does, it just does it in a way that I can ask a very human readable questions. But I need some queen names like this Grand Leoness. So let's see here. We've got Urchena is sacred, which is kind of interesting. I like to look at the names. So powerful ruler is Richilda, which kind of makes sense. I like that. Then there's Sichilda, which is victorious. There's Sigaburga. I don't know if I like that one, but that's a victory protection. Victorious. I don't know. It's victory protection is what it's telling me. Then there's Sigiswintha, friend of victory. There's Theodora, gift of God. Theudichild, people's battle. Theudalinda, gentle. Wizigard, guardian the meadow. That one I like because they're in this thing, so someone's got to be named Wizigard. But I think I like, what did I like? Where was it? It was, hold on a minute. I just had it. Ingonda is useful. Ingunda is a useful warrior. Katarina. It's great how some of these names have just survived. So of all these names and all of them seem like, boy, they don't exist anymore. Suddenly you go into Katarina, which means pure, I guess. And it's survived from then to present day. So I'm going to put her. I should use ruler. So it's more obvious. Ruler. Yep. She's going to be a Richilda II. Now I can sub that out for. I guess it's like Richard, right? But it's ladies. It's the ladies' version of Richard. All right, I'm over an hour, so I'm coming. This is my daughter's looking at me off camera with a mournful look, but I'm wrapping up. Promise, it's Friday. All right, folks. Well, I guess on that note, having come up with a name for the current Grand Leoness of Leoden, Richilda II, and my daughter giving me looks from off the camera, I'm gonna call it a stream. If you give a thumbs up on your way out, that'll be awesome. If you found yourself in here and not subscribed to the channel and you feel like subscribing, that would also be awesome. Now I'm getting like crazed looks from my daughter. Have a great weekend or whatever day night you end up watching or listening to this. Everybody, game on, and I will talk to you later. Bye now. Exactly. Time for family.